Good afternoon, everyone. Let's all take our seats, come to order. Thank you, staff, Mike, your leadership team, Kadon, Paletta, Giovanna. I know Wade was here. Andrew, Bart, Joan. Thank you. Board members, Priscilla, Michael. Good afternoon. Roll call, Joan.
Charles Long,
Here.
Chris Martinson, Michael Shaw,
Here.
Priscilla Benali,
Quisita Yate.
Kevin Mitchell.
Okay, thank you, Joan. We do have a quorum, so let's like to call this meeting to order at this time and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the state flag. Yeah, thank you, board members and staff. Let's go down to item number 2,
Motion to
approval of the agenda for today's meeting.
Motion to approve the agenda.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay, motion's been made by Michael Schaaf to approve our agenda for today's meeting, second by Priscilla Benali. Roll call. Joan?
Miss Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members. We have approved our agenda for today's meeting. Let's go down to number 3, approval of the meeting minutes of October 4, 2021.
Motion to approve the minutes of October 4th, 2021.
Okay, motion's been made by Michael Shaw to approve the meeting minutes of October 4th, 2021. Is there a second? I guess I'll second it. Roll call, Joan?
Miss Benali,
Abstain.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members. We approve our meeting minutes of October 4th. Let's go down to number 4, approval of consent agenda items. Board members?
Motion to approve of consent agenda items A, B, C, and D.
Okay, motion's been made by Michael Shaw to approve the consent agenda items. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Long, and I have a clarification.
Okay.
Asking for clarification on consent item A1 and 2.
Okay.
Could someone explain a little bit further in that?
Giovanna?
Ms. Benali, I will have, if we can get specifics with Mr. Bell, and Giovanna could probably answer some of the basic questions right off the bat.
Mr. Long, Ms. Benali, A2, I can tell you we have gone out to bid for the petroleum gas, which is utilized at several of our schools and teacherage areas. We did not receive responsive bids, and so we went back out to bid. And so this is the second round of bids for this, and that's what's being put forward. And on the, Mr. Bell can discuss the phonemic awareness.
Thank you for this chance to speak. The phonemic awareness bid, Ms. Benali, is specifically part of our ARP funding, our American Recovery Act funding. We were allowed to look at areas where there were gaps in the district, and phonics is one of our gaps in the younger grades, and so we had the funds made available to adopt a phonics program, which we had 6 companies that went to bid, and they chose a company last week, or a vendor. I apologize, a vendor.
Is there any other information you can provide us to see what kind of phonomic program it is?
So we have been, the state is required as part of their reading initiative is we've been taking a course, all first grade teachers this last year, including myself, with letters. The phonics program that we chose, we wanted to match that instruction that the state's been requiring out of us, the letters program, which is basically teaching kids phonemic awareness and phonics skills, which has gone a little bit away because of the literary and informational standards. We forget that there's those foundational standards. So this is just an attempt to alleviate a gap that we have in the district. And so it's basically teaching students how to hear sounds before they even learn about letters, and then start building that sound symbol relationship once they get confident in that.
So Mr. Long and Mr. Bell, so this will be available for all our elementary
Yes, ma'am.
students,
All K through
district-wide?
kindergarten, first and second grade students, yes.
Okay.
So the adoption, I said, was last week. We will, once it's approved by the board, we'll start out a rollout plan. But
So-
it will go to all kindergarten, first and second grade throughout the district.
And Mr. Long, and all of our teachers in those grades have been trained or will be
They
trained?
will be trained.
Okay,
We couldn't train them because we didn't know what the product would be
okay.
until last week, yes. Okay, any other questions? And I believe it's the company that we chose was Logic of English, and it does tie in. There's a high correlation with the program that the state's having us learn how to intervene with students that are struggling with reading. It's part of the dyslexia, the pre-screening for dyslexia. And so we had last year, I would just give you just a general roundabout that we had almost 90% of the kids struggling with reading last year, just giving not the assessment, a screener. And that was because of nobody being in school. So this is also a way to close that gap that we had from last year.
Mr. Long, one more question. So we're not adding more work on our teachers. Are we kind of replacing a different program with
Yes.
this one?
So this would
Okay.
be replacing the time. What we were talking about as a department is putting, for example, kindergarten, I'll use an example, 60 minutes on those foundational standards, what this program will emphasize, and then 30 minutes on the informational or the reading, to actually reading in the book. So we're looking at adjusting those times, yes, ma'am. So it wouldn't be more, it'd be adjusting what you have and focusing on the foundational standards first.
Have we sought out, besides our administration viewpoints, but teacher viewpoints?
Yes, we've been doing that with the coursework
Okay.
this whole year. I've been taking the courses with the first grade teachers. We actually allowed the kindergarten and second grade teachers to participate in it this year, which the state is paying for, but they're not required to do the dyslexia screener. Only that's happening in first grade. And so
Okay.
that, any other questions?
I can't, Mr. Long.
And
Thank you, Belle.
I welcome you. Once we get this rolled out, I'll invite any board member to come into a school and watch it with
I
me, just to
appreciate
see
that.
what it is like. Thank you,
You
guys.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Thank
Giovanna.
you, Wade and Giovanna.
Thank you.
With that, we have a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda items. Roll call, Joan?
Ms. Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members. We've approved our consent agenda items. Let's go down to item number 5, study circle. No public comments, right?
Correct, Mr. Long, there's no public comment.
Okay, let's go down to B, superintendent's report.
Mr. Long, members of the board, I have a few items to share with you today, some things that we are doing within the district or planning for within the district or have accomplished within the district. First, number one, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what we're looking at as far as what we are going to call virtual days. Currently, as you know, there are times where there is issues with weather and we have to cancel school or delay school or things like that due to weather, or it could be something else also. And what we have been looking at and looking to design is a way that instead of having to cancel school for weather related, for example, day, that and not have to extend the school year further into the summer, we're looking at ways in which we can provide an online or learning happening at home during those days that's appropriate and fits what's happening in their classes at that time, or their class, or with their teacher at that time as far as instructions. And so I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up that this is something that we are looking at. This would hopefully allow us, there may be some unique circumstances where we may still have to cancel and not be able to provide something virtually, but as a school district, definitely over this last year and a half or year, we've had opportunities to learn better on how to provide, whether it's online or other modes of instruction when students are home. And we are looking at ways in which we can provide that on those few days potentially when there is inclement weather or other issues with students attending in person in school, as a way to one, continue instruction, not have gaps, two, not to extend into the summer, which has been, as you know, an issue for parents and others when we're extending the days into the school, into the summer. It causes problems with people and their schedules and their vacations or whatever else it might be for that during that time. And so I just want to give you a little information that we're looking at a way to do that where it's as equitable as possible so that students can continue learning during those days.
Any questions on that, board
Mis-
members?
Yes, Mr. Long. I would not have a problem with that if Mr. Hyatt and our staff can reassure us that 100% of our students do not have any difficulties with internet or computer issues. I just contacted Mr. Hyatt over the last week about a student of mine, and I just hate for them to not get the grades or the lesson, the meaningful lesson, if there's issues. And if we can get reassurance on that, then I think it would be great that our kids continue to learn when there's no, due to weather or unforeseen circumstances.
Mr. Long, Ms. Benali, we are looking at, there obviously are still students that do not have the internet access that they are required under the Ozzie Martinez lawsuit now. And so we're being very careful to make sure it's equitable in a way that whatever option that student has access to as far as learning, that we provide that in an equitable way so that they get the material and they get the lessons that they need during that day. So it may come in different forms. It won't just be an online avenue. That way nobody is treated differently.
And Mr. Long, I would really like to reinforce that everybody is aware of that, not just administration and not just principals, because I think our teachers are not getting that information, and it's still a 0 on our kids' grades, or incomplete, or whatever it may be. I just see that in the future. So before that happens, if we can reinforce that with everybody, that those are different ways or modes of learning that our children can get instead of just internet. Because everybody's going to think, well, we can just assign an internet for that snow day, but not forget the kids that don't have internet. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Next, B2. As you know, the board approved to purchase and have painted activity buses for the 8 high schools that have athletics. This has been a bit of a slow process. One, we've had some design issues. We've also had parts issues, supply chain issues at buses being built. And so it's been delayed longer than we expected. But we finally got 8 designs that were provided to us. We found only one that was close to acceptable in the first round. So we're still looking at design for the other 7 right now and approving those. And as they become approved, we will roll those out to the community so they see what their high school's bus will look like as far as activity bus. And so the one that was close that we could approve, the design team started looking at that one and refining it to the point where we would approve it. And that was Crown Point's bus. And so I'm showing a picture up here on the screen of that activity bus and what that'll look like. We wanted to make sure that whatever we produced looked nice, obviously, and we wanted it to stand out a little bit compared to what the rest of the state looks like with their activity buses. And so, although they won't all look exactly alike, obviously, they'll have slightly different designs, but you can see how this is not just a one-color bus that we're looking for all of our schools. We're looking for different colors, obviously making sure that the school and the logos are on the bus, and that it looks, I guess, a better design than you normally would see. And so I think this is representative of the kind of work and kind of outcome we were looking for this particular bus that we're showing. Any questions?
Questions?
Just a comment, Mr. Long. Mr. Hyatt, thank you so much. I think ever since I was at Thoreau Elementary and especially in Thoreau High School, this was a dream. This was something we always wish we had, that we see at basketball games, football games, or wherever we travel, that we always saw them with other schools. We always saw, especially in Arizona, we saw these beautiful buses with their school mascots on them, and it's come to provision for our district. So I'm really excited, and I hope we can do some kind of, a big publicity thing when we get all the buses in, and a huge celebration for our schools, and of course, inviting the media out again to cover this. I think our kids will really enjoy this and boost that morale. And we went through a pandemic, but I think stuff like this just boosts that morale for our students, and especially with their team spirit. So thank you to my colleagues for putting this on the agenda and approving it. I think it's going to be great. So
Yep, it's going to be great. Now I want a small model of that so I can put it on here where I sit.
Mr. Long, Ms. Benali, this bus is actually in the paint booth right now as we speak. It just got sanded down, the paint, and so it's ready to be applied with the graphics. And so I expect it'll be not too long. November, we should be able to have this bus on the ground here in the community, and then hopefully soon after that we'll have the next one done. So thank you. Item number B3, I just wanted to make sure the community was aware of in preparation for the holiday season, is that during the week of Thanksgiving, that students are out of school, the school district will be providing a large box or food for every student in the district, so that they can take that home to add to whatever needs there are in the home for food. And so that is something that we're excited about. Not only will we have a Thanksgiving meal for the school and for parents done in a safe way, but also providing a large amount of food for students to take home during that week. And so I just wanted to make sure the community knew about that, so that they could prepare for that coming home with them when they leave school that day for the holiday.
Mr. Hyatt, with that meal, is there someone we can reinforce, or I don't know, on our robocalls or whatever they're called, to parents, so they know to have someone help or assist or refrigerate it? Because you know how some kids are, they'll just put the box
Yes,
somewhere and
we
forget
will.
about it.
We will be doing that. We're a month early right now. I want to start to get the message out there, and we'll send information home to the parents to make sure they know that. Because some of it will be frozen. There will be some dry goods and other things, but some of it will have to be refrigerated. So.
Okay.
The next item, I just wanted to give you just a quick update. The LFC, the LESC, the PSCOC, and others have been reaching out to the district to give input on how the public school capital outlay process could be better, specifically with the Public School Facility Authority, in ways that those processes to build facilities and repair facilities can move smoother. So Ms. Hanks and I, along with other school districts at times, Alamogordo, Central Consolidated, Zuni, has been in some of these meetings. Some of them are offline, some of them are during committee meetings, but giving them ways in which that process could be improved, become more efficient and more appropriate, especially for areas like ours and most of New Mexico that's rural. There are some nuances to New Mexico in different areas that need to be addressed so that equity is found with respect to construction. And so we appreciate those bodies reaching out to us and asking for our input, and we are always more than welcome to provide input on how that process could be better. And so we've already got some traction on some items that as we work on different schools to be constructed here in the near future, and also systems-based projects that we're doing in the school district. We've seen a little bit of movement already, a little bit more efficiency, but we're hoping that the transparency of that process and the efficiency of that process is going to be be refined and made more known to us here in the near future. There is new leadership in the PSFA, and so that has changed a little bit. And so we look forward to a better system here moving forward.
Mr. Long and
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt, Mr. Hyatt, if you could forward me those recommendations that you made to that, because I think there's going to be a discussion at the New Mexico School Board Association of that same recommendations, and I think it'll be good for, or maybe to all of us, because I think we'll all be, if we're present there, we can all speak on the same page as you guys. So I think that conversation will be forthcoming to the board, to the school boards too.
Mr. Giovanna, can you email that before the end of the meeting? We have a presentation we can quickly email to all of you. And we can put it online also.
Yeah.
Lastly, I want to give you a little update. There's not a lot of specifics on this yet, but there are conversations that are happening in the state about assessments. There has been some change from the last administration to this administration with respect to the appropriateness and excess assessment or testing that's going on with our students in schools. And what it looks like right now, we're starting to hear conversations coming from the public education department about giving more local control to school districts on what that assessment looks like for their students. And so we look forward to that. I'm currently been asked and are a part of a superintendent's advisory committee for the Secretary of Education for New Mexico. And I will continue to make sure this is a topic that is discussed, not just assessment, but local control in general for school districts, because local school boards know what their students need and what's appropriate. The nice thing about this particular topic is it's always been a complaint that we overtest or we have multiple tests that may assess some of the same things with students in New Mexico. And I think this conversation that's happening in New Mexico now should, if done appropriately, will lead to more local control, less testing, but more appropriate assessment for students so that we can gain knowledge about their advancement or their proficiency on the standards. And so this is refreshing to hear because, as you know, over the last several years, it's always been a specific mandated test. It may not always be the best test. And so having a little bit more local control to get that data so we can show what our improvement is or isn't, and so we can adjust as needed for our students is very welcomed. And so I wanted to just give you an update that it looks like assessment for New Mexico is changing for the better.
So, Mr. Long, with that, Mr. Hyatt, could we be one step ahead and see if our teachers or administration could do like a little task force thing to start working on an assessment that could possibly be a guide or a framework for other school districts that are in like our rural areas, kind of? And I mean, just to see how that test would kind of look. And because I think the next question would be, or the next step would probably be, okay, well, you guys generate your old test and let us see it, kind of thing. And I think maybe we could give an example of something, or if they don't say that, at least we can say, well, this is a test we came up with, or an assessment we came up with that is culturally relevant and to our local district, and maybe perhaps something with this kind of a sample would be beneficial for New Mexico.
Mr. Long, Ms. Benally, I agree. One of the things I have charged Mr. Bell with is let's get in the ear of PED at this time to make sure. I expect it would likely look like a list of assessments that you're able to use that the state will allow, and then we have to choose between those. But we've already talked, Mr. Bell and I, about making sure that from the district standpoint that we find an appropriate assessment. And if we're already doing one or we know one that's out there, that we can provide that input to the public education department. Obviously, we have a curriculum that we support that we want the assessment to be relevant for, and it's in our best interest, not just for us, but other like communities, to make sure there's not only a culturally relevant, but a relevant in general assessment that is appropriate for our students. And so We have the same mindset as you, Ms. Benali, on this particular issue, and are already moving forward with that, and we'll keep you updated on progress. And that completes my presentation for reports.
Okay. If there are no questions, additional questions, study circle C, you can read those on your own, board members, and put them in your calendars. Let's go down to new business. We have 2 items that require action. New business A.
Mr. Long, members of the board, Giovanna may need to come up to the microphone if we get into some specifics on dollar amounts, but one of the things that we are asking the board to approve is to eliminate all entry fees into athletic events for the school district. As we contemplated revenues, the number of people that are attending events in our schools, as we looked at the managerial part, administrative costs, in trying to serve this purpose in collecting funds from every single person that comes into one of our facilities, we quickly came to the conclusion that first, we're not having as many people come to our schools these days, probably due to pandemic concerns and things like that. Plus, we do have an online video program that people can watch from home, and that cost would still stay in place. But when we looked at the revenue, and we really felt that, kind of like our discussion with teacherages, the administrative burden wasn't necessarily worth it, and there was also an opportunity there to help with recruitment for teacherages. Similarly, with our athletics, we found the benefit to have more people come into our schools to watch our students and athletes participate, compared to the costs it takes to manage that, wasn't worth it. And so this year, we would like to provide, at least for a trial year, a pilot year, to allow for no fees into games, and to look at what that looks like for this year, and then contemplate at the end of the year whether we want to adjust or make that permanent for next year. This is just another way for us to get more participation in our schools, to lessen the burden on people. Obviously, district games and state games, we would not be able to allow those things to be free, because those are different organizations that sponsor those events. But for all of our regular season games, for football, volleyball, and basketball, we're asking for the remainder games that there is no entry fee. Obviously, we would still need to monitor the number of people that come into the facility to make sure that we don't go above fire code or other regulations and break those. And so there would be some monitoring by the game managers at those games to make sure that have appropriate capacity, and that obviously rules are being followed. But with respect to monetary amounts being given to the school, we would no longer do that for this year. And so that is what we're bringing to the board for your approval. Any questions?
Mr. Long. Mr. Long and
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt, thank you. So how will, well, one of my question was, is this for just a regular season game, but you answered that. How will this affect our locals' athletic funds to the schools locally? Because I know they do keep a percentage of the admission fees, correct?
No, they don't.
They don't
No.
keep no admission fees?
No, the admission fees, Mr. Long, Ms. Benali, the admission fees, there's not like a cut that goes back to the school. It goes to the general fund to fund travel, to fund buses, to fund all the different things it takes to run an athletic program. So what we would have to use is other dollars to fill in that hole, which is not as large as I thought it would be, as far as the revenue that we were receiving. And so we would still provide the same services, and actually we're looking at ways in which we can provide more supplies and things to schools, so that we're above and beyond what we were doing in the past.
So, Mr. Long, and Giovanna, how much are we talking about here year-round with our sports?
Sure, Mr. Long, members of the board, Ms. Benali, our highest year was around $333,000 collected, and that by far was not a trend. So we hovered somewhere around the $200,000 range on average, and it is because we only collect fees at some of the sports. Essentially, spring sports, there are no fees associated with them for the most part. What was happening was those funds were going into a special revenue fund, which was the 22025, and as Mr. Hyatt stated, we're paying for those things. But when you look at paying for people to take the funds, paying people extra to manage the funds banking wise, paying people extra to, circle that around, you're already looking at minimum $50,000 to $60,000 just to collect the fees. And not even taking into consideration the benefits of having more parents involved, more spectators involved in those games. And and I don't have to tell any of you, we are the poorest county in the state of New Mexico. Our families just get dumped on with fees and extra things added to them. And so we as a school district need to figure out a way to make it more inviting for them to come to our schools. Let them know they are always welcome here and that we value their participation and their role in their students' educational life. And all of our athletes are athletic, academic athletes.
I would also add that that's a minimum number, I would
Oh,
say,
minimum.
50, 60,000.
Yeah.
When I calculate it, when you start calculating in the game managers and what they make during the games, then the secretary's time to take care of those funds, then central office staff to manage those funds and auditing and all those types of things, probably closer to, I bet we're a little closer to $100,000 easy that we're expending. And so to expend 100,000 to make 100,000 or 150,000 and lose out at potentially more people coming in, that's not a big price to pay for the district. So.
Yeah, our lowest year pre-pandemic was only like $126,000. And so
essentially,
we spent more likely that year than we even took in.
Well, I think, of course, I think this is very nice and very beneficial to our parents and our athletes. And I do agree that, this will bring in more parental involvement, again, for even district-wide. So, Mr. Long, with that, I'd like to motion to approve.
Gushing, thank you, Priscilla. Motion's been made by Priscilla to approve new business A. Second by Michael. Roll call, Joan?
Ms. Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members, for approving that. Let's go down to the next action item.
President Long, members of the board, we're
Mr.
bringing,
Long, I'm sorry, Mr. Hyde, when does this start? The no entry fee?
we would start it immediately.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
President Long, members of the board, the last action item for today is something that we have done for several years now. Last year was kind of an odd year because of funding issues. We weren't quite sure what dollars were going to come into the district during the pandemic, at least the start of the pandemic. Obviously, we know what that is, how that has changed since then. And so that's why the retention addenda last year came at the end of the year and not during the fall. One of the things is we've given out this retention addenda, first and foremost, it has actually helped, we believe. From what we've seen last year, we had the highest retention rate that we could find with teachers and staff at least in the recent history of Gallup McKinley County Schools. One of the factors in that, we believe, is the retention addenda. And so because of the funding that we do have, we are able to offer this again. And what we're bringing to you is to not just do it for 1 year, but to make this a 2-year commitment for teachers this year and next year. We talked with our legal counsel and found that would be better legally to do it this way. So they would receive a $1,500 payment next paycheck, and then they would receive another $1,500 payment next year during the same time. Some of the feedback that we got from staff about this retention addenda was, if you're going to give it, can you give it a little bit before the holidays instead of the middle of the holidays? And that's totally understandable. This is a significant amount of money for many of our employees, and it helps them plan ahead of time before the Thanksgiving break, before the holidays later on. And it provides them some extra cash, maybe to do more with their families or whatever it is that they need to do within their budgets. And so that's the reason why we're bringing it to you slightly earlier than we have in the past. I think one year we did it closer to the December holidays, and then I think we did it sooner. Every time we get that feedback, we've just brought it back sooner and sooner in the year. A month before the holiday is probably a more appropriate time for people to be able to budget and plan. And so this would come in their checks. It wouldn't be delivered by by a paper check, but we would deposit this straight into their accounts this coming Friday. Questions?
Questions, board members?
Mr. Long, I do again. Thank you. Mr. Hyatt, this is so awesome. Again, oh my goodness, we're just full of good news today. But one of the question I have is the $1,500 that they're going to get each year, that's not taxed yet, right?
Correct. So
Okay.
there is a tax that's going to happen. So you're not going to get a full $1,500 unless you're untaxed, which I don't think any of our employees are in America. But so depending on your tax rate and your paycheck, obviously it would be less than the $1,500. But I would expect that everybody would at least get $1,000. But if you're a full-time employee, and so let me have Giovanna give a little bit more detail on that, so that employees and the community knows how this will
And
look.
the other question I had was, if you can explain this part, Giovanna, the SFE employees or any other people that are not in our district, what they won't be, correct, getting this?
I'll let Giovanna give the good news on that.
Sure. So, Mr. Long, members of the board, Ms. Benally, so a couple of things. This is going to be prorated by FTE, so it is $1,500 per full-time FTE. It does not add to the base salary, so there's no educational retirement that'll come out of it, which would be a huge deduction from the checks. So just the minimum things that we have to take out of this payment are if you have federal and state taxes that you get personally taken out, and then just the regular employment taxes, which are Social Security, Medicare, and the educational retiree health care, which is a required payment. So that does limit the amount of deductions. So there's no other deductions that will be taken out of this check unless otherwise mandated by law. And on the additional individuals, we have talked to SFE, and SFE has said that they're willing to meet the offer that we have to our employees.
If I could also add that, just to make sure it's transparent, is this is a commitment. In order to receive this money, it's a commitment to finish this year and next year's
And
contract.
next year.
And that's the part that we had to work out with legal to make sure that we did it appropriately. So it's a 2-year commitment. So if you're retiring before then you need to be really, really thoughtful before we dump this money on you. And we'll let the staff know this week. Just if you're leaving or you're retiring this year, you can opt out, and so that this is not given to you, so you don't have to repay it in the future. Or you could choose to get it, and then if you leave, it'll come out of your last checks. But unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, the purpose of this is for retention. That's the focus of this. And so it is to keep people in the district and help them see the value of working here in a monetary way. We obviously look for other ways to do that, accomplish that also. But this is exciting for them, and hopefully we can keep as many employees as possible for the next 2 years.
And it is completely voluntary, so if someone chooses to opt out for whatever reason why, that's completely up to them, and that's fine. They're welcome to do so. It does not impact their job at all.
Mr. Long and Giovanna, the question I wanted to ask was, so these retention bonuses will be given the same time around this year again, next year? Okay.
Yeah, and it's not a bonus, it's an addenda. Just want to make sure it's
Addendum.
really
Yes.
clear.
I know, I was trying to,
Yeah.
I was trying to use the word, I was trying to think of what, okay, well, I'll go ahead and motion to approve, sir.
Agushim. Thank you, Giovanna. Mike. Motion's been made by Priscilla to approve new business fee, second by Michael Shaw. Roll call, Joan.
Ms. Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members. I believe we've concluded our agenda items.
Mr. Long, I have a comment to make when you're done, sir.
Go ahead.
My colleagues and Mr. Hyatt and members here, I just wanted to announce that this morning the New Mexico School Board Association Nomination Committee met, and I was accepted to run for the vice president position. We have Christina Ludi from West Las Vegas that I will be running against for the vice president position. I think, and I really want to, I think we really need a voice in the western side of New Mexico, and also somebody that continues to push for our indigenous children. At this point, we don't have that voice, and I think it's really crucial and very important that we continue to have that voice for our children, and especially for the rural area children. Right now, there's only the corridor of Rio Grande that's represented, and we need somebody. So I just wanted to announce that, sir, and you know, ask for your prayers, because I think we need that voice. So yeah, thank you.
Negotiate. Thank you. And good luck. Board members, we're done with our business.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay. Motion's been made by Michael Shaw,
Second it?
second by Priscilla Benali to adjourn. Roll call. Joan?
Ms. Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes.
1:41.
Thank you, board members and staff. We're adjourned at 1:41.